Welcome back to the Back Markers. My name is Mike Hurley and I'm joined by Austin Evans. Hi, Austin.
Hello, hello, my friend. What a lovely day to discuss our favorite sport in the
I
world,
know.
Formula One.
This episode
Ah,
is as busy as the off-season has been. We have so much to talk about, and I
yeah.
actually think the best thing to do is to discuss maybe possibly the biggest piece of Formula One news in history.
Oh, what's that?
Gunther Steiner, his contract has not been renewed at Haas, which is, everyone's sad about it, but don't worry, he's going to be a correspondent on German television. Did you know about that?
Is he actually really? Is that where
Yeah,
he's going? Oh,
which is
man.
great. Like, I'm just
Good for
happy.
him.
He's a personality these days. Like, that's him. Like, Drive to Survive this season showed that. Like, honestly, I think it might be part of the reason he's not going to be there anymore. I did read a rumor. I don't know how much of it I believe that he wanted a share of Haas after he
Yeah.
was going to line up a big deal and was declined, and that's one of the reasons he left. But I feel like that relationship maybe broke down partly because of the team, but also maybe I think this season of Drive to Survive indicated, whether purposely or not, that Gunther Steiner is happier being Gunther Steiner than Gunther Steiner, the team principal. Like, he just is the
Well,
personality.
it's just one of those things where, he was instrumental in forming the team to begin with. Has been team principal for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years or whatever, which is
Yep.
a long time in the sport. And yeah, I think I was surprised watching the episode of Drive to Survive. I think it's like 3 or 4, whatever.
Yep.
It just how like much they just got him being like, yeah, I'm just really over this. Like, like he's hanging out with like Bonato. Sorry, spoilers, I guess, preemptively, if you haven't watched this episode, this season of Drive to Survive. We're gonna try to maybe keep it a little bit light, but like,
Yep.
there's some good stuff in there as far
Yep.
as really kind of illustrating where he was sort of mentally and just like, man, this is not fun. The calls to Gene every weekend are not.
Gene. It's like the same thing every time. Oh, I'm just embarrassed. I could not imagine having to flog myself for someone on a weekly basis like that. But no, this is obviously not what I was referring to. What I'm referring to
Yes.
is Lewis Hamilton joining Ferrari for 2025.
Boy.
Now, I told you
That's
about this, but it was my birthday, right? Last day in January was my birthday. And for my birthday, my wife bought me a Mercedes t-shirt. It's like a black and white camouflage Mercedes, big green on the front. I think it was 2 days later. So it's the first team merch I've owned. 2 days later, Hamilton's leaving. So at least we have next year's birthday present sorted. So it'll be something
there you go.
beautiful and red.
Look at that.
For me. So at first I thought that this was not true, right? Like when you started seeing
Yeah.
the rumors, because again, it's easy to forget, but we were talking about this a while ago because there were rumors about this a while ago. And I think
Yep.
you said it was going to happen, and I said you were crazy, I think was the way that went down. It
I
was
think I was
something along
taking.
those lines.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't think I was taking it all that seriously at the time
Yeah.
because like it didn't seem very possible, but it just seemed like previously there was something going on, right? Like they took, he took so long for his contract, yada yada yada. But then as soon as he signed his deal last year, it's like last summer or something, it seemed like it was a done deal. Oh, okay, of course, he's gonna finish out his career at Mercedes. Don't even think about it. And then out of essentially nowhere, it had just exploded.
Yep. And so, I mean, Lewis is doing a lot of talking at the moment, right? Because in preseason testing. And for as much as we're ever maybe going to know, it just seemed like it's a thing that he's always wanted to do, is to drive for Ferrari, which is, I think you can go back in history and find the fact that that is true for him.
Sure.
And that Fred Vasseur, he had a great relationship with him as a junior driver, as did so many people on the grid, which they do a good job of showing that in this season of Drive to Survive too. And it just kind of feels like he's maybe lost a little bit of faith in Mercedes, which you understand
Yeah.
why. And so now the opportunity is arisen, and he's going to make the best of it. I guess I'm betting on them to have a good car in 2026, right? Like, I guess that's the real bet. 2025 is not the bet. 2026 is the bet you would
Yeah.
expect. And so that's what it seems like he's going for.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a bold move because I think on one front you can look at it as sort of a sideways move. I think over the last couple of years, Ferrari have been marginally the faster team, but it's not like a massive difference. And going into this year, I kind of expect a little bit more of the same. That it's probably going to be Ferrari leading Mercedes, but there might not be that much in it. So it's not like he's really risking an enormous amount. And while I'm sure that the challenge of, because he's talked a little bit about how he would love to help kind of come into the team when they're not, absolutely dominating and help to push them to, another run of championships or something. I bet that there's enough zeros on the end of the check that also probably doesn't hurt things either, especially as he's kind of winding down his career. Like that's a completely fair.
That he is now the highest paid driver, which makes sense, right? Like I feel like. And now if McLaren tries to get Max will become the highest paid driver, right? Because to get one, what I mean is like those two drivers, if they went to any team other than the one they're currently at, they become the highest paid because you have to offer them a lot to get them to move because why would they move? And I guess for Lewis, there is the possibility that looking at the next 5 years, no matter where he is, there's a fight going on, right? Like it's a fight to beat Red Bull. Maybe that fight is more exciting with a whole new team, right? There are new challenges, new ways of working, different ethos, like all of that. Maybe that is more of a, if you're going to do it, maybe that's a better way to do it than being constantly reminded of your failure by being surrounded by the success that you'd previously achieved. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you think about like he's achieved so much with Mercedes that yes, it would be lovely to get one more championship with them, but what does that really do? Versus, imagine if he actually is able to get any kind of real success at Ferrari. Like that really kind of solidifies him as, of course, he's already one of the greatest of all time. Like there's no real question. It's a good argument, really, because I mean, obviously he did terrific at McLaren. He dominated at Mercedes for so many years. And if he can really finish that up with a good few years at Ferrari, I think that's going to really dispel any possible sort of argument that I think that would be a really phenomenal sort of step. So it's interesting. I think it's a bold move. I did not see it coming, but now that you sort of see, in hindsight what's going on, obviously somewhat sad for Carlos to kind of lose his drive, but I don't
like. I was listening to my favorite podcast, which is P1 with Matt and Tommy, who we actually got to meet them. We'll talk about that.
Yes, we
the
did.
Circus License event a little bit, but they were saying that the unfortunate situation. Right, Carlos was actually the better driver of the two in Ferrari, right? Ferrari's success last year was Carlos. He won. Carlos Sainz was the only person last year to deny Max Verstappen of a win, right? Like that is an incredible statistic when you think about it, right? And there is, like for Carlos Sainz, there is only one person that could take that seat away from him. And unfortunately, that person became on the market. Like it's so, I mean, and if you're Carlos, I mean, I'm sure it's annoying, right, and upsetting, but also you're kind of like, I mean, sure, like you've got to be a bit like,
exactly
who am I gonna fight here, But
exactly.
It is fun. I understand why they keep Leclerc. I understand that.
Oh yeah.
But I do feel like the two of them more recently, they are very close to each other. Like I think Carlos has risen in his skill. And
I agree. I don't think
has not sealed the deal.
I don't think anyone can argue that Carlos is not quite a accomplished driver. I think the performances that Leclerc has been able to pull out, you think about the string of poles that he was able to do over the last couple of years, even though obviously he really was not able to hold back that up with victories. What he's able to extract from that car really is something special. I don't think that there's a real argument that Leclerc is the best qualifier in all of F1 period. Like I think that that's a pretty good argument, right? Yeah. I think in races, he's also very good. I don't think that there's a lot of sort of things you can point to that Leclerc is not sort of an absolute elite sort of driver. It's just that he has not had the team and he has also not had the car behind him to really execute in the way that I think he could. Like, I don't think that there's any doubt that if Ferrari rock up this year or next year or 2026 or whatever the case is with a car that can beat Red Bull that you would not see Leclerc and Hamilton absolutely going for it, right? Like there's
Yeah.
no shot that you would not see that. Now, I don't
2022
know.
should have been his year. Like it really should have been.
Yeah.
Like
Oh God. Yeah.
they were racy. You know, like they had it,
Mm-hmm.
but it was just it came down to not being able to deal with strategy and iterate fast enough. But like
Yeah.
2022, when that season started, we all thought Leclerc was going to be world champion. Like that was
Right.
where
Yeah.
that year
Absolutely.
was going, and that was their chance. But
Yeah.
they left the door open for Max.
Yeah, and that's never a good idea. So it's just, I think it's definitely a net win for Ferrari minus the giant pile of money that they're spending. But I think outside of that, like there is zero sort of excuse whatsoever for Ferrari to not deliver results when they're going to have Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, the car. They're going to have everything they could possibly hope for, including Fred, who really seems like he is taking it. Like I was not actually massively convinced by that switch because like I always thought the Binotto was actually quite decent. Like he seemed fine, but what Fred is able to do with the team, not only by also getting Leclerc to sign the very lengthy, we don't know exactly how long, but a lengthy
I
contract
find this so
extension to mean.
frustrating. Like the
Yeah, yeah.
multi-year, like I had this in my notes, but Charles and Lando did this, where they're like
Yeah.
signed a multi-year deal, but no one will tell you how long it is. It's just
Yeah.
multi-year. Well, because I assume it is the situation like with Lewis. Was a 2-year deal, but it had a break clause, and
Yeah, it
these
was 1
were
plus
probably
1.
the same. They have break clauses,
Oh, of course, yeah.
so they don't want to talk about how long they're for.
Yeah, yeah, because you can imagine that, Lando signs a 2+1 or 1+1 or 1+2. Well, who knows what it is, but regardless, a multiple year extension. So it's like Ferrari have every piece possible except for the car, which
But I don't know.
it seems okay in preseason testing. We'll probably talk a little bit about that later, but it's just a very interesting time. But man, if you're a Ferrari fan, you were in for a very exciting couple of years without any doubt. There's no way this is not going to be phenomenally fun to watch. Maybe a little painful depending on how things go, but if you're a Ferrari fan, you're already used to that. So,
I mean, I feel like without the grid settling, because the grid is not settled for 25, but looking at what we know right now, Ferrari has the best driver pairing,
oh yeah.
right? Like,
Yes.
I mean, it could all change depending on who goes to Red Bull, if anybody does go to Red Bull. It could, right? We don't know. Look, we didn't think Lewis Hamilton was going to go to Ferrari. Like, we didn't think that.
Okay, here's a little thought exercise.
Yeah.
Pair Max with any other driver on the grid and try to tell me that that's a better combination than Max and Lewis.
Lando
Sorry.
Norris. Lando.
Lando?
Norris. Yeah, Lando. I think Lando and Max is a better pairing than Lewis and Charles.
After he just signed his contract. I mean, I guess that
No,
is,
but
you're right.
you
That is
asked
exactly
me-
what just happened to
that
Lewis.
was
Yeah,
not
yeah,
what
you're right.
you
You're
asked
right.
me to do.
You're
right?
sure. Yeah,
Of
yeah. Okay.
available drivers, I don't know.
I would maybe give the edge to Ferrari still. I think Lando and Max are an absolutely terrific pairing, but you look at the combination of what Leclerc and Hamilton can do together. Like there is no real weakness there.
See, here's what I'll say. Now, look, I think with where we are today, I think Max is a better driver than Lewis. I think that's clear with where they are today. Potentially,
Sure.
I don't know, but I feel like that is probably where we're at. I personally rate Lando more than Charles.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Man, I would have to go the other way on that. I think I would take Leclerc over Lando. I think Lando's a terrific driver. I think he's really, really good. There's not much in it, but Lando's good. But Leclerc has just been phenomenal at everything, and I think that Lando has had a lot more troubles to drive through.
I don't think Lando has had good enough opportunity.
That's exactly it. Like
but
he
I
hasn't
don't-
been
but that-
proven yet, though. Like I think when Leclerc's been given a good car, he's been able to execute, and I think that Lando's only
Lando
been
last year was great. Like when they fixed that car,
yeah.
he was leading Grand Prix. Like there weren't
Yeah.
many people that are able to do that. Like I think Lando broke Max's unbroken lap streak or something at Silverstone,
yeah.
right? So like
Yeah.
with a good car, anyway, that's
Yeah.
that's maybe an exercise for later on. I guess the last piece of news, which is like a cloud potentially hanging over this, depending, especially because when we're recording, there are allegations against Christian Horner of inappropriate workplace conduct, I think is maybe the easiest way to describe it. There really isn't any information. There's a lot of rumor.
No.
But as we are recording, there is an expectation within the next 48 hours, an internal investigation at Red Bull will be completed, and then that information, well, actually it has been completed. That information has been sent to Red Bull, not Red Bull F1, who are then going to make a decision about whether Christian stays as team principal and CEO, or both, or one. We'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
it seems not great. Ford are very mad, right? Like these are the rumors that are coming out. So I don't know. There is no point in us speculating on this other than if they get rid of him, that is a nuclear bomb dropped at Red Bull.
No kidding. For reasons that we'll discuss a little bit later in the podcast, we're maybe a little closer to this than normally you would say so. But it's just, there's nothing. There's all kinds of speculations, all kinds of crazy stuff that I've been seeing every day. I want to try to keep an open mind until we find out something, because we quite literally know nothing besides rumors. So I don't want to judge or anything, but it does seem very serious. It does seem like there's probably something going on here, but as far as what, how bad, the end result, who could know? But yeah, it's certainly a cloud. But yeah, I would honestly, I think any minute now we could find out something that could absolutely just either settle down or most likely just explode. I have no idea, but it's yikes. It has been a spicy offseason in a lot of ways. It's not stopped at all. Like, I feel like we had like maybe a little bit of January that was kind of chill, and then instantly it was like Gunther's out. We didn't even talk about Andretti got denied from joining the grid. Like, so many like of these huge things that have happened, and it's just been like after one after the other, and it's just gone. Like, it is absolutely wild. I am excited to get racing this weekend though, man. I am ready.
I just went to the Sky Sports website, and they're saying a resolution will not come before Wednesday. We're recording Tuesday, so which is wild, because media day is Wednesday, right? Like, because everything's earlier this week, right?
Yeah.
They're pushing it. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't really tell me one way or the other what's going to happen. So that's that. While we're talking about Red Bull.
What a segue.
So me and you had the opportunity to spend some time together a couple of weeks ago. You came to London.
Mm-hmm.
And we spent 2 days with Red Bull.
Yes.
We got to go to the launch of the RB20, which was amazing. It was so good. Yes. And we also got to spend some time doing some tours of the Red Bull facilities. And we also got to see a project that Red Bull have been working on. Do you want to explain this project?
Yeah, absolutely. So Red Bull, they've been working on a project. The gist of it is that it is a drone which is as fast, if not faster, than an F1 car over a lap. So it was developed by the Dutch drone gods, who we actually got to spend some time with, and they kind of showed us and everything. And essentially, this is a tiny little drone. It doesn't even look like a normal drone. It almost looks like more like a Nerf helicopter would be the best way I would describe it.
That is a brilliant way to describe it.
It's just super strange, because like it's this little guy, right? Like, you think, like, traditionally a filming drone is this massive like baby helicopter kind of dude. This is like you can hold it in one hand. It is incredibly small. If you want, there will be a video that Mike and I are maybe made while we were there, which will be going live in a couple of days. But as of right now, this morning, Red Bull posted their like sort of official video showing everything. They did a phenomenal job. Like we were only there for a small part of the shoot, but like the fact that they put that whole thing together so quickly and so well done, like, it's really impressive. But like, it's one of those things where you need to look at this footage, because there's no way that we can talk about it to sort of get you to sort of wrap your head around it. This drone is going like at 200 miles an hour, following Max around Silverstone, like literally like around corners and everything. It is the most visual sort of representation of the speed that Formula One cars are capable of that I've ever seen. It looks absolutely phenomenal. You need to check it out. I don't care if you're in the car right now, whatever. Make a reminder, watch that Red Bull video, even if you just skim through and watch some of the actual footage they got from the drone. Absolutely wild. And seeing that thing in person. So we were there at the I'm gonna forget. It's the proving grounds. I forget what it was called, but we were at the proving grounds where basically they had like a little drag race set up. And that drone takes off vertically, leans in, fully manually controlled, and it was gone. So David Coulthard was driving, I think it was the RB8.
I think so.
And he had like made it like 10 feet and the drone was like gone. It was just like unbelievably fast. And it's not just that, but it's also maneuverable. It's FPV, like the whole thing. It was just absolutely an unreal experience. Like, it was cool.
So have they made a video about that part that we saw? Because I know they put up one with Max driving against the drone as well.
Yes. So the video that they posted on, I think it's just the Red Bull channel. Yeah, it shows the whole thing. So it shows the drag race that we were there for
Okay.
at the Proving Grounds, and then later on in the video they show the actual a lap at Silverstone where Max was racing. Well, I say Max was racing the drone. The drone was kind of racing Max, but you'll see it is wild at how fast that thing is. Like it was crazy to see it just gone. Like it just takes off, and it is literally like a little speck in the distance after like 2 seconds.
Yeah, it was. Well, I would say for me, it was very exciting because it was the first time that I got to experience a Formula One car, like the feeling of being around one, the noise, the movement that happens around its space. So that was really cool. But just getting to see, honestly, I was actually more impressed with the drone flying than the car driving, because
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like that seemed like the guy the guy who was piloting it. His name, he goes by Shaggy, right? And it was really interesting because he was such a nice guy, but seemed like such a understated professional, like so low key. But like what he is able to do, and like the lap that the footage they've posted of the drone driving against like the RB20, it's amazing. It's amazing how it looks. So yeah, this is clearly something that Red Bull have developed, and they want to see it, I guess, used in the sport. Like we got to, the things that we would love it to do, it doesn't do yet. Like it can't do live, but you figure that is a thing they could work out in the future. At the moment, it will follow a car, and it can follow for a lap because it's being flown by someone. And then they can use that footage maybe in you could imagine like the final lap of the final race of the season, like stuff like that. You would assume that they would use. But I would. And I expect at some point in the future they will be able to get it to the point where it could show live footage, which would be pretty sick.
Yeah. There's a lot of limitations to the tech right now because they're like, it's not like they're just buying a drone, like they're custom building this whole thing. Like, there's actually there's a great clip in the Red Bull video where they show that like they built the first prototype, they tested it, they brought it back to the factory, and like, oh yeah, we've got all the materials and everything. We'll help you like sort of rebuild this thing to be lighter and stronger and faster and everything. And so yeah, the concept is right now very limited. It only will have about battery for about 1 lap, and even then, that's like the drone's actually faster. So we actually were talking with Shaggy a little bit about it, and he's basically, he can actually go even faster, but obviously he doesn't have to worry about like track limits and stuff. But like he's actually going at like, I don't know, 80% speed or whatever to keep up with the car, which is just a wild thing to say as a car. The RB20 is doing 170 miles an hour through like cops or whatever. Like it's crazy. So it was very cool to be able to see that footage. Again, highly recommend to actually go and watch it, if you haven't seen it yet. But then we also got to meet DC, which was incredibly cool.
Sweet.
Man, you know what really struck me about that? He is one handsome dude. He's tall. I was just like,
David Coulthard is a heartthrob. Like when we saw him, I was like, oh, and he looks so good in the race suit too.
Yeah, he did.
He is a handsome man. Like, and I would say he is more handsome in the race suit. Like that is a good look for him. And you got so there are a few situations where, like, I guess people see this when your video goes up, where I got to play cameraman for you, and we did
a great job.
Thank you so much. And we did some like interviewing and stuff, but it was like kind of like asking them about where like with David, like where he sees this technology kind of. The kind of mixture between technology and F1, which is like, that's kind of what we were there for, right? Is to see how the sport is now and how it's pushing forward. And I know we got to speak to some other people that we'll talk about in a bit, which is like a similar idea. And like, it is really interesting to see things like this because it almost feels like the increased popularity of the sport is pushing them to create new and more exciting things for stuff like social media. Like, this drone may only ever be used for social media, but you know what? It makes really good Instagram reels, Like,
oh yeah, of course. And so I think just speaking about the drone for just like one more second, like the way they need to improve the tech is somewhat clear because now they've got the performance, they've got the capability. They obviously need to work on battery life. Right now, it actually uses 2 cameras. So it has like a deconstructed GoPro inside to fit and be super super aerodynamic. But there's also a secondary analog camera because when the video feed is actually being sent back to the headset, they need minimal latency. And to make sure that it is a super, super clean link, they actually fly a second drone. So essentially, it's a relay drone which kind of hovers up above the actual operator to make sure that there's no lag, there's no loss in connection, there's nothing like that. So this is obviously like a very 1.0 kind of project, but you can imagine that, once they're able to develop it a little bit further, get some maybe slightly stronger radios or transmission, or however they actually are able to do it, to be able to broadcast this thing in real time or something, that would be incredibly cool. But yeah, it was very cool. Very windy, I will say.
Oh my gosh. The conditions that it was such a windy day, it was raining. And that was even more impressive that everyone was good with it, right? Like DC was fine driving in it, and Shaggy was fine flying in it. I'm like, these are a bunch of professionals. Me and you were standing like, oh, it's so cold under our little umbrella.
It's like, man, this is a little chilly out here. It was so cool. But that was only the first part of our day, because we also then got to go and do the factory tour at Milton Keynes. I don't even know how to describe this. It was we should walk through the day, right? I feel like this is like a rare experience that like we may never get to do again, right? So we got there in the morning. We were able to do a little like physical kind of like sort of warm up with the trainer. It was cool, right? So like we all come in and like they like kind of like give us some tips on like how they keep the team fresh as the team goes, between, races. And obviously, there's enormous demands when it comes to traveling and jet lag and making sure that sort of it was really cool. So we got to do like sort of that warm up. We went out to the track and we watched DC race against the drone a handful of times, and then we got to come back to Milton Keynes and do the factory tours. Mike, we're working on a video as of recording this. It's like we're almost done with it. It'll be done in a day or two. Half of my video is talking about the experience of walking through, because we obviously were not allowed to film. Oh my!
They told us as well. Like there is just a no phone policy for everyone inside the factory itself. Like people do not have. If they probably don't have their phones on them. If they do, you never take it out, because you're dealing with top secret stuff the majority of the time. So like we got to go through, and like a lot of it is like looking at machines, right? Like there's like this, we're looking at this huge scale, and it's interesting to see. But I think the thing that we both enjoyed the most was seeing the command center. So every team has one of these, and actually in Drive to Survive they show Mercedes as one, and it looked quite similar actually, where like they only have minimal team that go to the track. Like they have a limit on personnel that can go to the track. So kind of if you're not essential, or if you're not physical in your role, you stay at your HQ. And every team has a room, and they took great pains to tell us that like AT&T hooked them up and get them like as instant as possible connections for data and video to the track. And they had this massive screen, which could be split into lots of sections, and they have these like 4 rows of seats. They said they had NASA help them build this, which looks, it looks like a space shuttle launch center is what it looked like.
It absolutely does. You got the tiered seating. Everyone's got like, they're like little like computers there and the mics, and apparently like during actual races, everyone's there with the headsets, not talking. They're all just like, monitoring their data and sending stuff back and forth. And it was wild, man. And that was like the first thing we saw.
Yes, it was amazing. It was my favorite thing. But like all of the people working on data there, it all funnels to one chief strategist who will then talk to the chief strategist. And so they're running like billions of race simulations, and they're like, I can see every driver. They got someone listening to all the team radios. It is what you would imagine they're doing, but I just didn't know that the majority of that work is actually happening at HQ. That was kind of interesting to me to see that was the case. So then we got to go through, and we're taking a look at kind of the different parts of manufacture, right? That they're showing us like some of the scale models that they make for aero. They're showing us some of the materials that they use. We got to see some of the carbon fiber processing and stuff like that.
Wild.
It was really fascinating stuff to see. But then we got to do another part, which was
Yeah, like it feels crazy because like I don't even know how long we were in there. Like they gave us a very comprehensive tour of the whole factory where they build everything. But then once we left, we got to see the Red Bull powertrains building, which just was mind blowing after mind blowing thing. Because first of all, this is all very new. So if you're not familiar, Red Bull are currently working toward building their very first engine. So previously they've worked with Renault back in the day, and they work with Honda engines now. But basically, when Honda left the sport, Red Bull decided to take their sort of the engines into their own hands and investing hundreds of millions of dollars into building their own facilities, engines, and everything, all right there in Milton Keynes. It's like, so it's like right down the street, right? It's all right connected, essentially. And the fact that like had like built not only just like a factory, like it's like one thing to say, oh, they're just building an engine factory, right? But like a couple of years ago, this was like a shell of a building. There was like, we walked into one part of it and go, oh yeah, last year this was dirt, and now like we're in the building with the stuff in it. It was just like, it was crazy how fast they've gone. And Mike, the amount of money that was spent. It's just, and obviously it was all brand new, right? Like literally, like they are building their test engines, their single cylinder engines, which are the way that they do a lot of their testing. And then obviously they've got the V6s, but like they don't have, like, as of right now, so they're building an engine for 2026. Here at the beginning of 2024, they are not done remotely, right? Like, they're still like in early prototyping phase. They have engines that function, but they have not like put the whole, at least as far as I understand, they haven't actually put like a whole engine together. They were a little vague, as you might imagine, on exactly where they are in the process. But like, I got the impression that like they don't have like the full thing built and ready to go in a car yet. They're still like kind of, oh, we have this piece here, we'll put them together in 2 months, and 6 months we'll do this and that and everything. But just the amount of money that went into that facility. The dynos, I think we can both agree, the dyno rooms were the craziest thing in there, right?
So these are these big testing machines, essentially, that you hook up an engine to, and they can simulate one, it can give all the power to the engine to make the engine run, but it can also simulate a bunch of things that could occur to an engine during its production, right? And so they can also test it over long periods. They can hook it up and just have it go for hours and hours and hours and hours. Like, these are full, huge machines. I mean, every single one of these is millions and millions and millions of pounds, and they had so many of them. And they also had them very, like, we saw this machine that was the size of a room to test apart the size of an iPhone. It was like
the turbo.
The turbo. It's like,
yes.
It was wild. It was like something out of a superhero movie. It's like, is this dyno going to explode and turn me into Dino Man? Like, what's going to happen here? You know, like, it's a big radioactive turbo. Like, it was crazy to see. But again, like, one of the things I was struck by in all of the people that we got to speak to is how proud everyone is of the work that they do.
Yes.
And additionally, something that I was also really struck by is everybody was wearing team uniforms.
Yeah.
The people in the factories, the clothing that they wear, which is obviously provided by Red Bull, it looks the same as what you see the mechanics wear. And so I was, throughout this entire experience of seeing these two facilities and seeing all these people working, and I was struck by the idea that you hear people say, but we got the proof of it, of like, this is a team sport.
Yes.
But what makes this different to other team sports is the entire team isn't on the track. There's two people on the track, but it takes 2,000 people to get those two people on the track. And like,
absolutely,
the car is the teammate, and the car is built by all of these engineers and all of these people. Like, another thing that I couldn't believe but made sense to me once I actually thought about it was like, we walked past this one room and we could see into this glass, and people were soldering things. Like, there were people just soldering things. Like, oh, well, I mean, of course a lot of this stuff is handmade, because what machine could build this stuff? There isn't a machine that can build an F1 car. Like, it has to be built in parts by machines and then assembled and tweaked and tuned by human hands. And I just found that kind of beautiful, really, in its own way.
Yeah.
You know?
Because you hear like, oh, like an F1 like steering wheel costs $50,000. I'm like, that sounds ridiculous. No, it's because someone spends 1,000 hours soldering all the individual wires and cables and buttons and like the long like sort of cable runs that go like, they're all like intricately like wound to go back to like the ECU and all these things. Like, it's just, it was such an amazing experience just to really visually see the amount of people, machinery, and hours it goes into every single F1 car, every single design. The fact that, they've got the design office. We got to walk right underneath Adrian Newey's office, which I kind of nerd out a little bit.
Yep. We could see his drawing board. We could see the drawing board.
We saw the edge of his drawing board. We did.
Yep.
We could see it through the window. And it's just like the fact that they will draw something up and in the matter of hours, they can have it prototyped,
Yep.
printed, manufactured, and ready to be tested and put on like a car, run through whatever regiment they want. It was wild. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, one of the coolest experiences I have ever had in my
I was
life.
just
Of
in
just
awe,
seeing.
an absolute
Yeah.
awe for the whole day. It was so enlightening and humbling, and just
Yeah.
like it really, like, I think listeners of the show know how I've felt about Red Bull in the past. I left feeling different about the team. Like, in seeing all of these people care so much, I was just kind of like, you know what, you deserve it. You know, like,
Yeah.
you all worked really, really hard, and now you are
Yep.
champions again. And I just think
Yes.
seeing the people doing the work and how everybody we spoke to was so enthusiastic for Red Bull, I was kind of like, good work, you know?
Yeah. It was one of those things where I think we had like quite a long shuttle ride back afterwards.
Yeah.
And I feel like we just sat there for like 20 minutes and all we could just like, whoa. I feel like I said that like 7 times, like, wow.
It is one of those things where, like, it is unfortunate. We cannot give you the sense of what it was like, because, like,
No way.
we can only kind of talk about it. You need to see it. They actually do, by the way. You can take a tour. Like, there are tours that are available.
I don't know how that works. And they were, because like, so the way that it's set up in Milton Keynes is they essentially have so many buildings that they have roped off the street, essentially. So I know that they previously had lots of people wandering around. I know that there's also like the little gift shop area, which is somewhat open. They have like security shacks on the side.
You have to register for it, but I think
definitely do.
it is possible. Like, the reason I saw this is I was on the Red Bull Instagram account was promoting tours today. So, like, it's
nice.
a thing that you can do.
Oh my God.
I mean, and if you think about it, what we saw, it looked like it was set up, right? There were like these little areas where they had things that were clearly part of a tour. It's like, take a look at this, hold this, you know, like it was set up for tours. But, you know, you're not going to see the powertrains part of it.
Probably not.
Well, they said to us we were the first
you're right.
media group to actually get a tour of the powertrains division, which I did know. A couple of people were really excited about. Most people didn't seem that excited about us being there.
Of course. Well,
we're just like hanging around. Like, what's that do? You know?
No, they were actually like doing dyno runs, and we kind of went over there, and I remember we were like, "Hey, can we take a look?" And the guy goes, "Sure," and he like flips the button,
Well,
and you hear the engine go.
That guy was cool.
Yeah.
That guy was cool, right?
He just looked like gave the nod.
He enjoyed us being there. He was like, "Oh, I'm gonna make this thing make some noise," and we were all just like,
"Yeah."
You know. But
yeah,
then,
it was crazy, man.
So we did all of this, and then the following day, we are at the launch of the RB20, which was incredible. So, like, we get there, it's like a whole thing. It's like, it is quite a day. We get there, we go into, I think they call it the Heritage Room. It's a room that you've seen on TV. Red Bull have this. They have this huge room where they have this semicircle of their winning cars, or like cars from their history, and some trophies. You know, so we're hanging out in there, which is awesome. Taking loads of photos and videos because it just looks so good. And then we're taken over into essentially a warehouse, one of their warehouses, where they've set up all of this stage stuff and roped off areas. You know, we got to see there were interviews with Christian Horner and Adrian Newey, so we get to see those, and the F1 Academy drivers as well. And also, I don't think they interviewed Max and Checo at that point. They arrived
later,
when they lift up this thing and the car is there. And they came on, and there was a bit more of that. And then, so that was really incredible. Like, I know you were especially excited about how good the production was.
Oh my God.
It was really
wild.
Because
it was just like
we saw it in the morning, and it went out as a live event like 8 hours later or something, right?
Yeah. So essentially, they recorded the whole thing live. I think they literally paused for like 10 minutes in the middle because they need to like readjust the cameras, and they kept going. So it was just a brief break. But like, yeah, the production was insane. Like the hosts, everyone kind of moving back and forth, because we were right in the middle, and like, we're just waiting for them to get started. You know, I'm expecting, it's an event. It's going to take, an hour or whatever. And suddenly it's like we hear people talking. We turn around, and there's like the host is like right behind us, just like giving her lines. And then like the screen's running. I was like, they're just doing this thing. It was so smooth. Like, you can tell that Red Bull is a media company sort of first and everything else second, because they had that thing absolutely on lock. And then I know we should probably talk a little bit about it. The RB20 looks phenomenal too. Like, it was
scary.
a big Yeah.
It's a
Everyone was
scary
like, oh,
car.
it's gonna be the same, right? And it's like, how about we just redo everything, and instead of being half a second ahead of you, we're a second ahead of you. That was kind of the vibe that we
Yeah.
got. Like, just looking at Adrian Newey, like, yeah, we just figured we should, make the car a little bit better this year. Last year we kind of tweaked it, and this year we wanted to kind of really go all out. It's like,
Well,
last year wasn't all out.
the big FU of this car is it looks like they are trying the original Mercedes concept, which
Yeah, well,
I mean, there's a
partially,
lot of
yes.
people say there is an element of it where they are going for a minimized side pod design. Like that's kind of what they're going for, which is if they make it work, it's just like, why kick them when they're down? You know what I mean? It's just like
I don't think Red Bull know how to just, let's just let go easy a little bit and give them like a chance to catch up. I think they're like all out all the time.
It seems like this car is incredible, right?
Yes.
I know these people are incredible. I've seen it. I can't help but question, why would you do this? Like, it is really weird to me that they have taken a dominant car and just decided to do a new one. It's strange, like, because everybody was, I mean, I'm not alone in my surprise about this. This was like the surprise of the F1 world, which was like, wait, they didn't just improve the RB19? Like, no, they've created a brand new car. Like, it was a fundamentally different idea for how a car will deal with airflow under these regulations. It's a strange move to me, because it's like, I mean, sure, maybe it's faster, but like, what is it like at 25 laps? What is it like at, sure. It is an interesting, it is a very interesting, a curious decision to me to go in this direction. I think what it does show is that, like, whatever it was Mercedes was working on, there was merit to the idea. They just couldn't pull it off. But Red Bull are more confident that they can.
Yeah, it does feel like that, right? Because the gist of it, so you can almost think about these cars, sort of these regulations, it's like a 4-year span, right? So, we've finished the first 2 years of the 4. We've got 2024 and 2025 before they kind of redo the cars and kind of start over sort of from scratch, right? So,
especially
from Red Bull's
with the engine changes too, right? Like, it really is, we're starting over.
Exactly. The 2026 cars, they might not be like a complete ground. Well, actually, they will be, but they will be much, much more different than, looking from 22 to 23 to 24 or whatever, right? So it seems like from Red Bull's perspective, they went into 2022, with the ground effects and everything, as sort of, they had a good concept, but it was underdeveloped because they'd spent so much time fighting Mercedes and Lewis the year before to win the championship. So they kind of like were a little bit on the back foot to try to get started for these next regulations. And
very
because of that,
unreliable car, right? Their
exactly,
car was
and that's
very,
why
very unreliable at the start of the season.
Exactly, which is why we saw Ferrari dominate. But once Red Bull really kind of got stuck in, they were really able to kind of get their heads around it. They were able to develop very quickly, right? So they were able to kind of get more and more performance. And again, coming into 2023, they were also able to get such a big leap that it seems like from the outside that they probably chilled out on the RB19 fairly quickly last year, and started switching over to this year's car, which you can only assume is the basis for next year's car as well, right? So like, hey, if you can almost think about like the car's like a platform, we have our core building blocks and we can do all the bits and bops on top. There's always like a limit of the performance of the platform. You can add all the wings and bits and bobs and whatever, but it's only going to get you so much performance, which is kind of what we saw with Haas last year, where they tried to develop themselves forward, but they sort of were running into a cap of like, there were fundamental performance sort of issues with the car.
Is the perfect example for that, right? Like,
yes.
They are the perfect example. They tried a second time and still couldn't do it, and now this year is a new concept. For a car.
And it seems like Red Bull are doing something kind of similar. Obviously, they were incredibly dominant last year, and there's zero doubt that they could have just tweaked last year's car and still done very, very well. But I'm assuming that they had ideas to go a different direction. They had the time, the luxury of time. They didn't have any of the penalties from the catering from a couple years ago. And so what they were able to do is to essentially go with a very different concept, which you can only imagine is going to be a step forward, but probably more importantly, has another year or 2 years of development sort of potential on top of it, so that, this RB20 is like sort of spec A. Well, by the time they hit spec F or G or whatever the case is in 18 months from now, as they sort of develop it, that they are going to be in let's be real, a pretty good spot to win 2 more championships. Like that feels like kind of the move that they've made here. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see, but based on what we've seen from testing, it looks pretty good.
Did you hear what
scary
Max
good.
said about this car?
No.
He said it suits him better.
No!
Can you imagine? How? How is that possible? It's so scary. They're so scary. They like the car is scary. They're scary about the car. Like I am just like,
Yeah.
I remain dubious. That's how I feel. Like I'm
Good.
just like,
Good.
to me, it is like I am very confident that they will win the season.
Yeah.
I expect it to be a little shakier, maybe in spots.
Maybe.
We might get a bit of hope towards the start of the season. Is what I'm thinking.
I would love to see. I mean, obviously, we'll find out really quickly over the next couple of weeks with the races. But yeah, I just think this whole experience was obviously incredibly kind of Red Bull to invite us and to like
Very
sort of
thankful.
let us see this sort of behind the scenes. They were, gracious hosts. I think, as you said, sort of everyone who we met was enthusiastic and cool.
I do
and it was
just
a
want to say
really
real quick that the nicest person that I met was Max Verstappen. I could not believe
we
it.
didn't even talk about this. Okay, you should tell the story then. Yeah.
Basically, we had the chance to spend some time with the drivers. We got to ask them some questions, and me and you were standing there. Max was being interviewed by somebody before us, and Max was being very, very short with his answers to the questions. But honestly, like, the questions were pretty basic questions, the kinds of questions that I'm sure he is asked all the time. And so what I did actually quite enjoy, like, being around him, is you could tell he was just kind of teasing, like he was having fun. It kind of felt like how they say, like, lions play with their food. It kind of had that vibe to it, where he's just batting the interviewer around a little bit. And so, like, we were next, and I'm like, oh God, I don't think he's in the mood for this. And I mean, all credit to you. You had some excellent questions, which I assume are part of the video, so we won't spoil it.
Oh, we can spoil a little bit. Yeah.
But like you were talking to him about his sim racing stuff, because like one of the great memes of the off season is the man wins 19 races and then decides to immediately go and dominate iRacing and sim racing. It's like, can't you not just leave people alone? You know? And so, but you asked him some great questions, and he had some really insightful answers to the point where it kind of felt like he was just enjoying having a chat with you. And in that moment, I kind of thought to myself, you know what? I bet he's just happy someone asked him something he is actually interested in talking about, rather than the same question every 10 minutes for 4 days. And afterwards, I took a photo with the two of you afterwards, and I asked if I could have a photo with him, and she said yes to, which I was very thankful for, and I got a photo with him. And I actually did say, because as I said, it was an honor to meet you, which it is, right? It is an honor to meet a world champion. And I meant it. I said, good luck for the season. Because I'm now a Max Verstappen fan for the time being. In this brief window until the season begins.
There you go.
He's my bud.
It was absolutely lovely. So it was my first time meeting Max as well, and I was a little nervous, as I'm sure you were too, because it was exactly right. We had seen.
I was shaking holding the camera. The adrenaline was really high, because it was like, this guy, it was pretty nerve-wracking.
Yeah, and it was like we had just a little behind the scenes. So the way it was that whole area for the launch that they had just filmed everything in. Essentially, there was media everywhere, and sort of the media all sort of picked a spot to hang out, and then sort of the driver and their sort of PR handler would sort of come by. So they're going from person to person, sit down there, right, a couple people in front of us, it was like the main F1 crew, and they're asking them all the questions about the season and all the stuff about this and that. And so as he came to us, kind of started chatting with him a little bit, giving him the mic and the whole thing. And he just immediately was just cool and chill. And it was like, hey man, I'm sure you got to do 100 of these things, but I'll try to make it quick. And he's like, oh yeah, no worries. And give a big smile. I was like, all right, let's go. And then he was just really into it. And the same thing, right after, he was just really nice and very kind. And it was great. Honestly, as soon as I think we both sort of said, as soon as he was done and he walked away, we're like, yeah, boy, we got it. That was so great. It was so hot.
And we also got to spend time with Checo too. I would say Checo.
Absolutely.
Checo was a little bit more tired, I think. I think that he kind of was over it. But my favorite part of the Checo part is you go up to him and you're like, hey man, it's great
Oh,
to
no.
meet you. No, this is good. And he's like, I
Go
don't
ahead,
know
go
if you remember, but we made this video together, and his PR person jumps in. It's like, oh, he does so much, he's not going to remember anything, like da 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 da. And then you show it in the video, and he's like, oh yeah. And I won't say what he said because this is a clean podcast, but he was like hyped as hell in that moment, and I loved it because like, you know, it must be he gets this stuff all the time, right? Of like people are like, do you remember me? Da, 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 da. And like the PR person was immediately trying to like karate chop in and be like, you know, oh, it's not his fault. But like, no one's gonna forget having a PC built inside of a racing, like inside of
Yeah, he was like, oh, like how many years ago was that when we did the Microsoft Xbox stuff and we got to chat. So yeah, it was obviously great to catch up with Checo. I agree. He definitely seemed like he was going through. In fact, we saw immediately after he talked with us, he was like in front of like 30 press who were all asking him all these questions. A bunch of them were about some of the other stuff.
It seems like a rough day, right? Like a rough day that you are going through. Because as you said, like it was strange to me the way they did it, but I like how they did it, which was that I thought that they would just be positioned and it would just be like a rolling line of people going through and interviewing them. But what they actually did, they just walked them around. But like, I mean, we were in there for a couple of hours waiting for him, and the whole time he's just doing interviews. Everyone's just interview after interview after interview. And as we were saying, it's the same questions over and over and over and over. Like I do not envy that part of their jobs.
Yeah. And then just to sort of round it out, we were very late for the shuttle. Like the shuttle driver was literally calling us, but we were able to briefly chat with Christian Horner as well, which obviously, you know, this is just a basic chat as far as like, oh, tell us about, you know, 20 years. And, you know,
I mean, he had a really interesting question, of, like an answer about like thinking about how AI might affect car design, which is really stuck in my brain because they have so much data about the cars and how they drive. And if you feed all of that in, and like, I could imagine a scenario where you're like, here's 20 years of data about how our cars work. Here's the new regulations. What's this car supposed to look like?
I love the dichotomy of, you know, on one side you've got Adrian Newey sketching out designs. On the other end, you got AI just churning out. Like, I feel like they've just completely missed like the middle, which has been like Formula One for the last 20 years. Like, oh, yep, there we go.
Newey doesn't use a computer. That's what they told us. And it's true. Like Adrian Newey designs with pencil and paper. And then Christian Horner's like, we're going to use our AI to build a car.
I just love, we got a quote, someone was telling us how like, oh yeah, his Adrian Newey's assistant has to print all of his emails out every day. It's just like, I
love that so much, man. I want to live in that world. I want to live in that world where I don't ever have to actually open my email app and someone just gives me pieces of paper with the emails on.
Oh my goodness.
But maybe they want to make like Newey AI, right? Like that's what they're actually looking for. You take Adrian Newey, put him into a box, and then just have him forever, and they could just keep making.
Yikes! That's Black Mirror if I've ever seen it.
Yeah, but it was an incredible time.
Unreal.
I know we spent a lot of time talking about this, but it truly was amazing. It was like so good, and thank you to Red Bull, Austin. Thank you to you for bringing me along. It was just so good, man. I had such a great time.
You crushed it. If anyone wants to watch, you did. No, if anyone watches the video that goes live on the channel here, and I think a day or two from when we're filming this, it was all shot by Mike. So you can give him a little shout out in the comments for Mike, the cameraman, because you were holding it down, my dude.
Doing my best. All right, we've got to make our predictions for the season, but I want to just touch on a couple of things from Drive to Survive. Just like a couple of things, as you said, like not too many spoilers, but there were just a couple of things that I mean, I would say season's really good. Again, I think that they've refound their place because I think like season 4 maybe was the one where they basically were just manufacturing drama for zero reason, right?
Yeah.
And it felt like, you know, the sport and the fans were kind of upset and they got it back together again, I think. And this is, I think, is another season where they're focusing on the actual real drama because there is always real drama. And I also think that this season does a great job of reminding me, and is a good thing to remind other people of, in a year that was called like quote unquote boring because Max won all of them, there's so much stuff going on. And it kind of made me feel like how I always say, like, I never find the races boring. Like I just love watching it happen. Like it doesn't really matter to me in that way. Like, of course I want to see more fighting at the front, but you just find other things to focus on. Like there's always something happening up and down the grid. But there were two things specifically I wanted to mention that I loved. One is like something Lewis said when he was just like, reclaim my 8th, where it's just like he has he's taken a different attitude about this now. I think maybe it has now sunk in with him and he's come to terms with it, that he is now using what happened in 2021 as fuel, right? Like I feel like it's taken time for him, understandably, to come to grips with it. But like when he says it, you can see in his eyes that he likes what he's saying. Like it fires him up. I really would love to know I don't know if you've seen the Mercedes episode yet.
Not yet, no.
So
I'm like halfway through the season.
There is an entire episode focused around Lewis re-signing, right? And so that is the episode. And there's also talk about him going to Ferrari, and there's lots of quotes about Lewis would never go. I would love to know what happened between him signing that contract and like 6 months later. Like something happened, and I don't know if we're ever going to find out what it was, but I would love to know. And then the last thing is James Vowles is my absolute hero.
God.
I love him forever and ever. Like I loved him before because I love how clear a communicator he is. But one, the great moment where like he just cannot speak. But then also the caffeine thing. So good. So good. And when he's like, we're talking about breakfast, and he's like, I don't want to have one of those acai smoothies. I'll have one of those tomorrow. Like the guy is like planning his entire weekend. Like I'll tell you now, right? We say goodbye to Gunther. We welcome James. James is now the star of Drive to Survive. I love this guy so much, and he does such a great job. Like always, like he does a great job of explaining his role and like everything that he's got going on, and that's really awesome. But then also he is just quite a character. Like he's just a character, and so like for me, better than Gunther. And I'm sorry, last thing I'll say is.
Okay,
no, I mean, like for me personally,
sure.
I kind of got over the Gunther bit a little bit, but like what I like about James is like James is entertaining, but he's also able to explain things to me where I don't.
Yes.
I just feel like Gunther was always just upset, but I mean, he had good reason to be, but like, you know, I thought that having Claire Williams
phenomenal
was such a great addition to this season because there's so much drama in the team principal world. Having an ex-team principal to be able to contextualize what's going on in the mind of the team principal is so good, considering, like, I realized it in this season, how much of the show is actually focused around the team principals more than the drivers in a lot of instances. So I really enjoyed the season. I think it's a really good season again. And again, it's like just another thing that's got me so hyped for this weekend.
Absolutely. I'll just give two quick shout outs to a couple of moments that I loved. I would love to have been in the room in the edit when they're putting together that first episode. Again, very minor spoiler, but Lance Stroll obviously had broken his wrist in a biking accident before the beginning of last season. And the bit of tape when they got Lance just casually saying like, oh yeah, I'm going to go mountain biking. Smash cut 2 weeks later. He broke his wrist. The moment in that room when they realized that they had that bit of footage must have been the best like moment of the whole year. When like, we got it. We got it.
Yep.
And then the moment where I cannot believe that they would let them do this. Zach Brown, obviously McLaren had an awful beginning of the season. And like he's there in a meeting with his biggest sponsors, like OKX and Google and Android. And he's like basically having to describe them. They're like, hey, yeah, we spent our whole marketing budget, buddy. Can you like, make the cars faster? He goes, yeah. And then they cut to him like in the CEO of McLaren's office going, yep, understood. I'm like, I
was really intrigued about that meeting. That doesn't seem like the way you would have that meeting. That you would have a meeting with two separate companies at the same time. So, I mean, maybe it is how they do it, but like that seemed very weird to me. But also, I don't imagine that like the VP of Android cares about staging something for Drive to Survive. But like it was just very strange. It was very, very strange to me. Like that whole thing. And like just the whole thing around sponsors in general. But yeah, also that first episode about Lance is really, really good. And like
it is good.
I think it is the beginning of the Lance Stroll redemption arc. Like I think
wow, let's not go that far.
Look, I'm just gonna say, I think that episode it showed what I like about Lance. I think that Lance gets too hard. He gets treated too harshly, I think, sometimes.
Yeah.
I've said this on the show many times. Like, there are people on the grid who are worse at their job than Lance Stroll. Like, that is just a fact. But because his dad owns the team, people don't like it. But And I understand it.
Yeah.
Like, there would be but there is also a better person to race alongside Fernando Alonso. Like, that person exists on the grid for sure. Right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that is the way it is. And if we're gonna have someone who is in it for pure money, at least they're not terrible. Like, and I just really respected him for doing what he did to get back in the car. And I think that the show did a very good job of showing his tenacity in that moment. And I also think it did a good job of humanizing Lawrence. Like, that moment.
Well,
which,
they did their best.
The interview that he gave, when you could see that he was clearly emotional about the fact that his son was hurt more than his driver was hurt. You know, like that I felt was like, you never really know, right? You don't know how this guy actually feels. And that was just, I thought that was a nice moment.
It's, again, I've only made about halfway through the season, so I haven't finished it yet. But like
Very
from
solid.
the episodes I've seen, it's a great season. Yes, of course, there's always the people who are like, "Oh, that's the wrong clip from the wrong race."
I have no time for that. I have no time for that. It's not necessary.
Exactly, right? Like, it's this. Like, I care if they're making up drama, right? Like a couple years ago, that was a little bit much, but like the way that they've gotten so many of the things, like, obviously they filmed all this way before Gunther left the team, but the episode was like, you watched that episode and then you were like, oh, of course he left. Like, it seems like complete obvious. And like, they obviously had to make that call beforehand. There's a couple of other moments that I definitely won't spoil, which were very much like, wow, there's like good detail. There's like good sort of actual behind the scenes. Like, I just feel like this year, there's a lot of things. Like, oftentimes, especially the last couple of years when I watched Drive to Survive, it's neat, it's interesting, it's a good like sort of refresher on the season. There's a little funny moment here or there. But this time around, it's like, every episode, I'm like, oh, that's how that happened. Oh, that's how they really hate each other. It's like, you hear bits and pieces.
Is really good because it tells more of the story other than just like, oh, the story is just Pierre and Esteban just hate each other. But I feel like I've never understood the detail. And I still feel like there are key details that we don't know. Yeah, but I feel like I have a little bit more understanding for what happened to them when they were kids.
Yes,
there's a little bit more there.
Absolutely. It was nice to get some of that. And again, that's like what I would like to see out of Drive to Survive. I can read news articles and see interviews and all that kind of stuff. That's all fine. That's all great. But it's nice to actually hear from the people involved, the teams, the drivers, more just about what's going on, sort of explain these things. And so, just kudos to the Drive to Survive team for actually like really getting some like actually interesting stuff and not just sort of a watered down kind of just summation
Summary
of the season. Summary was also the word. Look, man, I'm ready for a year of F1, baby. I don't have time to use my fancy words.
Before we go, let's get our predictions on the board. Because look, we wanted to do this after testing, but realistically, testing gave us nothing to talk about. Like I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and stuff. Testing didn't really indicate anything. We need to wait to see what free practice is like this week. So let's just make our predictions. As the reigning predictions champion, you can choose if you would like to go first or second.
I will defer to you, my friend.
Oh, I was not expecting that. All right, so we will do this like one each, right?
Yep.
My first prediction, someone other than Max wins one of the first 5 races.
Ooh, I like that prediction. I like the specificity of that prediction. Now, that could be Checo, though, right?
Sure.
Okay. You know what?
Yeah,
I
but
get
Max
behind
Verstappen
that.
won 19 races last season. So, even if Checo wins, that's still quite incredible.
But Max could stub his toe in like 2 weeks
could.
and decide not to show up or something. You never know. That's a good prediction. So Max will not win all 5 of the first races. We could sort of sum it up like that. If anyone else wins any of the first 5 races, then you get your prediction.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I like that.
Thank you.
Totally on board. All right. Mine, you're going to like this one. Lewis wins at least one final race with Mercedes.
Yeah, that's great.
I think
I love that. I love that. Yes.
It's not I actually don't feel confident in this. Like, if I was gonna like put betting odds on this, I would put more like 30%. I don't actually feel like it's gonna happen. I think it could happen. It also could easily just like not remotely be a thing. Obviously Mercedes didn't win anything last year. Lewis hasn't actually won since 2021, right? I don't think he won in 2022 either.
No, he has not won since the 21 season. So this is actually a pretty risky pick.
I agree.
But it would be amazing. I mean, I hope beyond hope that they have a really good season this year together. Like I would love that. I mean, it would be so incredible if he won. It's not going to happen, but it would be.
Well,
wouldn't it be incredible? Wouldn't it be, no, like if he won the championship? I'm saying.
Oh yeah, that's
right. But like, wouldn't it be amazing though? Like, it would be awesome. It would be like the perfect Drive to Survive season. But look, it would be amazing to see him just do what you were saying. That like he wins a race and celebrates with the team, and like that is a thing that they can all take away for this year. Like that would be pretty great.
Yeah. All right. What's next?
Talking about Mercedes.
Yep.
The Mercedes second seat is filled by a driver currently on the grid.
Oh, okay. All right. So this is a bold decision because obviously the heavy rumor right now is they have I forget his name right now. The F2 driver who's starting this year.
Antonelli.
Antonelli, thank you very much. Who everyone's talking about as if he's going to be the next Max Verstappen, right? And he's going into F2 for his first season this year. And the current rumor is that if he does well and wins this series or does super, super well or whatever, is going to get that Mercedes drive that Lewis has this year. If not, you think someone like Alonso maybe?
No, I actually think it'll be Carlos Sainz on a 1-year deal.
Ooh. So, okay. Now, this is a deeper conversation, but I think just for the prediction, you're just going to say that
someone currently on the grid, on the grid this year will jump in the seat. Because I understand this thing about Kimi Antonelli, right? What would be the harm in putting him somewhere else for 1 year?
Yeah, which I'm sure was the plan before Lewis left anyway, right?
It's a very bold move to me to put a junior straight in at Mercedes. Like, the kid may be incredible, but like they didn't do that to George. Right? Like, George.
They also weren't winning championships at the time, though. They might be a little bit more desperate to kind of make a bolder move compared to they're winning 5-6 championships in a row. Like
maybe, but like, do you want to take the risk of essentially a rookie? Like, he might need a year or two to kind of get up to space. So, are you happy to be mid-pack for that year because one of your drivers isn't doing so well? I mean, like, especially when like they're already risking it because, I mean, Lewis outperformed George quite significantly last year. We'll see how it goes this year, but you're already losing a huge point scorer for the team. Yeah. Wouldn't it make more sense to have someone who at least knows the tracks? Like, you know, like I'm not making this decision. I'm happy I'm not making it, but I feel like at least a year at Williams, right?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't that make more sense? Like, and Williams would love it, right? Logan's not lasting another year if he continues at this pace. Like, we've got we have like a potential future world champion. Pair him with Alex for a year, which would be great for Williams if that kid really is that good. Like, it seemed bold to me to be like, we're going to bring him from F2 and put him straight in at the second best team on the grid. Like, that is... Yeah. Unless he truly is Max, but Max wasn't Max to start, right? Like, the Max we have now, like, he is incredible. And he was great then, but, like, it takes a little time.
It takes time. You have to learn finesse.
For Lewis,
you have to learn...
right? Like, Lewis had to come up. Like, they got to...
Well, actually, to be fair, Lewis almost won first try out at his...
you know.
he did this exact thing. His first season was at a top team in McLaren and almost won the championship. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. Like, it's... Those things happen every 20 years, right? So, look, I'm with you on this one. I think it's probably similar odds to Lewis winning the championship, in my opinion. I think it's like odds are he is actually going to not get that seat next year. I think that it'll go to Fernando or it'll go to Carlos or someone like that. I agree with you, but...
God, I would love Fernando.
Cool. Yeah, how spicy would that be? Good. He would be nice for 10 minutes and then just go right back to being Fernando.
They seem to be friends. They would murder each other. They would not survive the year. It would be disaster.
No shot. I love that at the Aston launch, Fernando was basically like advertising himself as like, hey, I'm the best person for that Mercedes seat. See you later, Lewis. Like, it was so funny. They're like, so what do you think? It's like, well, I'm the greatest driver of all time, right? It was just very funny.
Very good.
All right, next prediction from my side. I'm going to say it. V-Carb, Visa, Cash App, Racing Bulls.
V-Carb.
RB.
We haven't spoken about this. Visa, Cash App, Racing Bulls. What on earth? What is that? What is that? It seems
I'm a big fan
by
of
the
Visa,
way,
Cash App.
they've gone for RB. Like, that's the... RB
is.
and same as like Sauber, they're calling it Sauber because there's issues with that too. But it seems like they're the
Yeah.
names that the commentaries give. But V-Carb.
I'm gonna say V carb. I'm gonna try it for a few races, and I'll maybe go to RB. The problem is RB just sounds like Red Bull. So,
I don't like that
anyway,
either.
all right.
Yeah, I don't like RB.
I'll say V carb for now.
Mm-hmm.
My prediction: 5th or better in the championship. I think they're gonna outperform Alpine. I think they're gonna outperform potentially even Aston, maybe. But I'm gonna put them at number 5 or better in the championship.
Let me tell you
I
right
think,
now, man. If they
yeah.
do that, there is going to be. It's gonna be a bloodbath.
So here's my reasoning. The car looks good, right? They were already making good progress last year. They inherited a bunch of RB19 parts, so they've got some suspension stuff.
This is what I'm saying is going to be a bloodbath.
Yep. But here's the other thing. I think Daniel and Yuki, actually good pairing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that those two, they work well together. I think they're both hungry. And also, they've both got the incentive. Because look, I'm not going to say it, but it feels very much like that is somewhat a shootout to get that second Red Bull seat. Now, mind you, Carlos is also absolutely in the mix for that too. Maybe even Fernando, who knows, right? But like,
I don't think it's going to go to either of them. I don't.
Well,
I know it hurts
probably not.
people in their soul, but like, I think they're both great in V-Carb. I don't see it.
Probably.
I don't see it.
Well, here's the thing though, right? Even if neither of them actually get the seat, I think both of them will have all the incentive in the world to give it 110%.
Yes.
And if that car is halfway decent, I think that's enough. I mean, Alpine seem like they're absolutely nowhere. Like it just, even like McLaren seem like they may be a little bit vulnerable. Like I could see VCAR being not in that sort of that bottom tier group with like Haas and everybody. I think actually they could be up there with not Williams. I think they're going to be above Williams. I think they could be up there with Alpine and McLaren. So that's my prediction. I don't feel super strong about it, but I'm just going to be bold with it. I think they're going to be 5th or better in the championship, almost certainly beating someone like Alpine.
I like the thought that Danny and Yuki will be giving it all the beans. Like, they will be trying so hard. And so, yes, there is a possibility that with a decent car under them, which you would expect the V car probably will be this time, that they would perform well. And so, like, I am agreeing with you on this pick. I just don't think that the two of them are the pairing, like with Max. Like I just don't see it.
I agree.
Really, it's just like,
I'd love to see it, but I don't think it's happening. But I think they'll be motivated. I think the V-Carb will be pretty good this year. I think it's going to be a very good team for V-Carb / AlphaTauri / Toro Rosso / Minardi.
I genuinely could see they just give it to Liam Lawson. They give him the Red Bull seat because that is a very Red Bull thing to do.
Liam just hopscotches both of them. That'd be hilarious.
Well, but they've done this. They've done this weird kind of stuff before, right? Like where they have. Wasn't that what happened to Alex?
Alex had a half season at Toro Rosso before they swapped him with Pierre. So so basically,
that's weird, right? Like they do weird stuff like that. Like
summer break. I think we'll know much more about what the plans
season,
are.
Yuki or Danny, one of them could be gone.
Possible, yeah.
Well, they did it. They did it, right? So like and they put Liam in, like because if they really want to see,
they put Danny Rick in, and then Liam subbed in for Danny Rick while he was injured. But still, it was
they got rid of Nick DeVries.
Yeah, but for Danny Rick, not for
but what I mean
Liam,
is I could imagine a scenario where halfway through the season, Yuki or Danny are kicked out, Liam Lawson's put in. That's how you decide which one of the three of them takes the second seat of Red Bull. But it's what they do. They do this stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
So like,
I don't like that.
I don't want it to happen, but it's what they do, right? And so like it would. Okay. I think it is very clear that they have 4 people for one seat, right?
Yeah.
Sergio's still in the car, right? Like, if Sergio...
And you got to assume Carlos, man. Carlos has got to be like their number one target,
I'm just talking
right?
about in the Red Bull program, let alone the other people that they might want, right? Like, so we'll see how it goes. But what I was saying about Bloodbath, if that V-car performs really well, every team that's below them will be launching protest after protest about the fact that it's made in part from RB19 parts, which is borderline, I think. Because no one else is doing this. It's weird.
Wasn't it 2021 or whatever? Aston kind of just copied the Mercedes, and they mostly got away with it, but they got a little slap in the wrist because I think they got a little too punchy with like the brake ducts or something. Like,
but is copying different to
Well,
the teams are under the same ownership? That's
well, I
where it
think
gets a little bit more weird, right? Because it's like, what realistically stops one designer doing this and giving it to the other one? Like,
so
I don't know.
there certainly are rules as far as what parts that you can sort of just freely share, what parts you have to get from like a year old, yada yada yada. I'm sure that VCarb have tried their best to be sort of as thorough as possible, but just much like Aston Martin straight copied the car and just had a little tweak here or there. They accidentally, or I think they accidentally used slightly too many parts like the brake ducts were, which is why they got in trouble. So I can see something like that happening. Hopefully VCarb were very on top of things and they didn't accidentally take one too many parts that they were supposed to or whatever. But you're right. If they are good this year, and I think they'll be pretty good, the knives will be out for any sniff of something that is wrong. I mean, yeah, we'll see. So that's my prediction. Fifth or better, baby.
All right, my third and final prediction. Doubling down on Daddy Val's.
Ooh, okay.
Williams score more points than in 2023.
So they finished seventh,
with
quite a ways
points.
clear. Yeah. So they did quite well. The best time, 2023 was their best finish in, I don't know,
A
like,
long time.
Quite a while. Yeah. So you think that maybe they won't actually finish sixth, but they'll get more points at least. Is that the prediction?
Yeah, that's my prediction.
Okay.
More points. I mean, look, it's riding on two things. It's Alex. It's all riding on Alex. Right?
Yeah.
But
it's still
also,
a one-person team. Yep.
this is like a full season. They've had their first season. It's like a full season. We start from right because Val's came in like the season was beginning. They've now had the time to gel. They've had a whole time to produce a car together.
Yep.
I'm expecting, with all of that, same as I'm actually expecting with Ferrari, improvements to be made. And I'm thinking that Williams was so surprisingly performant last year. I'm expecting big things from them this year. I'm expecting some look, I'm not expecting, obviously, a podium, right? I'm not expecting that. But I am expecting that, they may be closer to that than we expect, right? Like, I could see that happening because Alex had such a great season.
Yeah.
Working with what he had, so we'll see.
Yeah. I think that's a very reasonable prediction. I think my gut here is that VCarb are still going to have the edge on Williams. I think it's probably going to be more so like how far do Alpine fall? Because I don't see Hasser clearly nowhere. I think Sauber probably really aren't making a lot of progress. So it's like sort of in that kind of bottomish sort of group. A few points, much like last year, a few points can make a big swing. So, all right, I'll take that one. That's you've got some solid predictions. I feel like you got some safe ones. You got some safe ones, not to throw some shade or anything. I got a little bit of a spicy one.
Okay, give it to me. See, this is what the winner does, by the way. Previous winner gets too overexcited and they throw them out there.
Lando wins his first race.
Oh, I saw
asterisk. Asterisk. Did you?
Lando wins a race, sprint or Grand Prix. Is that your pick?
That's no. Literally, my sub bullet is a sprint race counts. Yes, that is exactly it.
That was that was in there, and I was like, Then I had a thought about Mercedes score more points, and then I was like, oh no, I prefer Williams.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I love it.
So we can share this one then if you want. We're both rooting for Lando this year.
Yes. I really, really, really want it to happen, and I'm so worried that Oscar's going to do it first.
Well, he already got the sprint win last year, so
I mean like a Grand Prix win. I'm worried because I'm worried what that will do to Lando. Like I genuinely feel like there's nobody on the grid for me that deserves a win more than him. Like he has proven it. He has been so close. Like Sochi 2022, 2021, when it was
like that,
he was in the lead for the vast majority of the race, and they made a wrong call on tires, and it rained, and he span out and lost it. And like right towards the end, absolute heartbreak. He deserves a win. I think he has the most talent on the grid to have never won a Grand Prix. Like at the moment.
Ooh. Yeah, he's got it, right? Pretty much everyone who I would consider to be like an elite driver has at least won all race. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, he's definitely due. I think this is actually the riskiest pick of all of these. Yeah. I don't know how good that McLaren is. They had obviously like a huge swing last year where they had a really underdeveloped car. They, halfway through the season rolled out a massive upgrade But then it felt like they were maybe sliding down a little bit last year. Like it feels like sort of with the regulations the way they are, with the cost caps the way they are, there's sort of like waves, right, of each team. Like sort of like, you bank up all your potential improvements, you throw it on the cart once, you hope it works. Either it does, it doesn't. Same thing with Aston last year, where they sort of had a huge boon and then they sort of kind of went downhill, downhill, downhill. So I think it's a very risky pick for McLaren, or specifically for Lando, to win a race. I would say, if I was going to put odds on this, 20%. Like, it's not good for him to do this.
It's risky for a bunch of reasons, right? It's risky because, like, what's the McLaren like? But it's also risky because what's the Red Bull like? What's the Ferrari like? What's the Mercedes
What's Oscar like?
What's Oscar like? It is a big hill to climb, but I do believe if it's climbable, he will do it.
Agreed.
Right?
He needs a little bit of luck and a decent car, and I think he could absolutely do it. So that's my third prediction. It's the scariest one because I don't think it's going to happen, but like you said, I'm going to be a little risky this year, and if I get it, I feel real good. Because I like the fact that we had the exact same one, so even down to the sprint.
So I'll recap them. So Austin's predictions are Lewis wins a race, V-Carb plays 5th or better, and Lando wins a race, sprint or Grand Prix. You're very anti-Max in your predictions here,
Well, what's the predictions for Max?
There's two Grand Prix that he's not got to win in your mind.
Oh, yeah. No, look, I don't think... Okay, if we were going to add like a sub-bullet, he's not going to win 19 Grand Prix this year. He's going to win a bunch. He's not going to win 19. That 19 is a weird aberration. I think as good as that Red Bull is, 19 was unbelievably consistent. I think he might win 15 or 17. I think there's...
Wouldn't that be
I'd be shocked if he does 19
Wouldn't that
again.
be great? Like, genuinely, like, let him win the World Championship. I don't care,
Yeah.
right? But it would be such an exciting season if he wins less. Because it means someone else is going to win more, right? And that will be fun. That will make, if that's the case, that will make this season a lot more fun because it will feel more unpredictable. And that's kind of what we needed, because it seemed like very predictable at a certain point. My predictions are someone other than Max wins one of the first 5 races. Maybe it's Lando, who knows? The Mercedes seat will be filled by someone currently on the grid, and Williams will score more points than they did in 2023.
You know what, man? I'm looking at these. They feel good. They feel good.
Wouldn't it be great if we got them all?
Yeah. Wait, is that possible? Actually, yeah, no, I think it's possible, right?
It's possible for every single one of these to be correct.
So Lewis or Lando need to win one of the first 5 races. Fernando needs to get the Mercedes seat. Danny Rick and Yuki need to score a gajillion points, as Williams will, and everyone else needs to score nothing. Yeah, that checks out.
There are a lot of people that could get that Mercedes seat. Alex Albon.
Yeah.
Right?
Whoa, that'd be spicy.
Right? It could be, I still think it could be Carlos. There are many people who would take that seat if given. I mean, I would love it to be Lando.
Yeah, of course.
It's not going to be, but
not going to happen.
Lando
not gonna
and
happen.
George. Oh, now that would be quite a pairing. We'll be
It'd be
back
quite a thing.
later on in the season. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you all. Goodbye.
Adios, and we'll see you at the next F1 factory that we can sneak our way into.
Don't forget, the first 2 races of the season, they're on Saturdays. Do not forget this information. Very, very important.
You wake up Sunday morning, you'll be very sad.
Very sad. All right,
And
stop.
cut. Sack.